Hello, welcome to NEWSPASTY with me, Johnny Vedmore, where we're going to look at two slightly effeminate men moaning like old women. Yes, yes, moaning like they're old women. Guess who it is? It's my old friend, Douglas. Oh, look at this. This is one of the slightly effeminate women, and this is from Talk TV, who have now given Douglas money, a buttload of cash, to be their Zionist spokespeople. I'm sure Talk TV are getting loads of funding from the Zionists right now. Loads of it, loads of it. It's called No-Go Zone for Jews. London becoming permissive environment for radicalization. It's carefully worded, isn't it? London becoming a permissive environment for radicalization. What does that mean? A permissive environment, so is a lots of people could be easily radicalized because of what? Because of the no-go zone for Jews, which is also known as peaceful protesting. Not in violent protests or anything like this. This is all objecting to peaceful protests. Why? Well, can you imagine? It's because we're listening to a bunch of suited up Zionists who gain loads of money from siding with Israel.
Dr. Alan Mendoza, thanks so much for joining us. What do you make of the comments that have been splashed all across the front page of the Telegraph and other newspapers this morning?
Well, Robin Simcox is right, isn't he? I mean, he's pointed out to an obvious problem, which is that every Saturday, the streets of the centre of our capital become no-go zones for British Jews, who are rightly...
They don't become no-go zones for British Jews. It's just British Jews refuse to go to places where these protests are and take it personally. Like people protesting against genocide in Israel means that all Jews are bad. Acting like that makes it manifest, makes the results of it manifest. I'm scared to go outside. But have you tried going outside? No, I'm just scared to. Is that the people's protesting fault? Yes, it's all of their fault because they're saying things I don't like. What are they saying? They're saying that they shouldn't be taking Palestine and it should be Israel. It should be Israel. It's too much. I can't take it. I can't go outside. I can't even look. I can't even tell if there's anything bad happening because I'm not willing to look. I'm creating my own no-go zone.
Worried about wandering into an area where they should have every right to be in as anyone else in this country, and to be faced by people carrying slogans that are sometimes anti-Semitic, sometimes have genocidal intent on them, and just a generally very hostile.
There's slogans that are sometimes anti-Semitic and sometimes have genocidal intent. So, you will be sure they will show us some of these, won't they? They're saying that their slogans, they sometimes got genocidal intent, and they're going to show us a load of these protests, these savage protests that are happening. Look at these savage protests that are happening right here. Look at this disabled person. I think she must have got that flag and stabbed someone with it or something. She must be so violent.
I think it's a fair comment, and he's right about it.
Ceasefire now.
The polls
Seize
at the beginning
mean
of these
happiness.
protests showed the British
Free
public
Palestine.
believing, whether they agreed with the protests or not, that, in Britain, people have the right to protest and so on. Do you think that people's attitudes have changed as the weeks and indeed months have gone on? Because these protests, among other things, I mean, they...
What? Wait a minute. Attitude has changed to, oh no, we should have peaceful protest, to what? Attitude's changing. So what is the attitude change that you get from not wanting peaceful protest? It's I don't want people to be able to peacefully protest. Okay, do you understand what that means? That's an authoritarian tyranny. Yes, but I don't want it. I don't want it because they make people scared by protesting peacefully with signs, genocidal intent like Free Palestine and Stop War Now, and let's all have a bit of happiness or whatnot.
As well as being very offensive and intimidating to large sections of this country, they also close businesses and much more. Do you think that public sentiment is turning against these protesters?
I think
No.
in one sense, I'd like to see some polling firstly to that question to be asked, so that people understand what's happening right
Look at
now.
these savage.
But I think the more interesting bit is that I think for most people, if they're not in
None of
central
these
London or
signs are
having some
bad.
purpose, they've kind of just sort of blocked it out. It's become part of the general noise. I think that's what James Cleverly essentially was saying.
So what is it? It's no-go zones for Jews, a permissive environment of radicalization, or we've just blocked things out because it doesn't really matter anyway. Oh, it closes some businesses down. It closes businesses because they have to close. Most businesses don't have to close during a protest. I don't understand what they're saying there, because if you're in a protest and you're walking past a shop and want something to eat, you might go in and buy something to eat. So it actually brings more people into the center rather than less people. Is that correct? And after they protest, they're going to go around, do a bit of shopping, do some other stuff too, aren't they? So it actually brings more people into the center.
When he told the protesters last week, you've made your point. Everyone knows what you're doing, and nobody particularly cares anymore about.
So no one really particularly cares anymore about the calls for freedom for Palestine and for an end to war and genocide. Well, if no one cares about that, then we should protest even harder, isn't it? This is what the problem is. He's explaining what the problem, because no one cares. Well, we should protest harder because it is even worse than we think.
But you're right, there is a disruption to shops. If you want to go shopping in central London, it's become, sort of a race to get through hundreds of thousands of people sometimes who are trying to stop you from doing your shopping. And Douglas, I think...
So wait a minute, that doesn't stop shops, that doesn't close down shops. That means that there's a lot of people in the centre instead just a few people. That doesn't make any sense. None of this makes any sense.
we have to look at concepts of liberty here, don't we? We talk about freedoms.
Yes, we
yes,
do.
Of course, there's a freedom to protest, and nobody wants to see that curtailed. But there's also a freedom from having your lives disrupted week in, week out. And
No, wait. You are doing exactly what you're doing, is trying to curtail the right for people to protest and the freedom for people to protest. That's exactly what Douglas Murray is doing. That's exactly what you're doing, because you're paid by the people they're protesting. Because you gain money from it and gain influence from it. That's why.
don't think the freedom to protest means that any time you want to do something, it should be given precedence over the freedoms of others to enjoy their times. To go back to the
Hospital, not
comments,
a target.
I know of synagogues
Savage.
who've had to, not have services at their usual times simply because they're worried about what might happen if their members walk out into a mass march. Now that's...
Just because people are worried about what might happen doesn't mean that anything's going to happen. It just means they got anxiety. They're given anxiety by people like you who are told that it's a no-go zone for Jews. You've got it on this no-go zone for Jews. You're telling Jews that. You're not telling everybody else that. You're telling Jews, you don't go into there. Don't go in. You don't know what might happen. You don't know what might happen. They'll attack you savagely because it's you who's done it all. Oh, we won't do it. We hate all of these people protesting. You're right. Let's stop protests. Why? Well, we don't like the fact that they're protesting against Israel, really. That's it.
Not freedom, is it?
No, that's astonishing. I mean, you can only imagine.
Is it astonishing?
The noise and the protests that would occur in this country if anything similar happened in regards to Muslim worshippers having to change their orders of service or their time.
No. It would be roughly the same. There has been loads of disruption to Muslim worshippers, especially in the past. These guys, and they would do it again. It's
times of service or feeling under such threat. But tell me, Dr. Mendoza, last Friday, the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak gave this speech on the steps of Downing Street. We were talking about it in the last hour. And it's a sort of emergency statement, rather surprising circumstances, rather surprised he gave it.
PR piece. It was a PR piece. Oh, look. Douglas Murray's got his mouth just like he wants it. Oh, look at these two. I reckon they're boyfriends.
And he talked about what you've just mentioned, the problems that the protests have brought, that the messages effectively hit home, but, effectively called on Britain to be more resilient towards extremism. And immediately after he gave that speech, the various groups that organise these weekly protests announced that they were going to do another one the next day, and they did. Are these people just
And why
laughing
not?
at the Prime Minister?
What protesters? Are they just laughing at the Prime Minister who comes out and does this? Oh, protesters, get down. They're doing it again. What do you want to happen? A Prime Minister walks out and says, we got radicalization and it's get fear for the Jews. And so then all protests must stop and tyranny become. Is this what you want? You don't want to curtail protests apart from all the curtailing of the protests you want to do. You don't want to see us end to the freedom to protest, apart from seeing an end to the freedom to protest. Everything's scary, isn't it? You can't go outside because of all of these protesters. No one can even move. No one can do any shopping because the city centre's so full.
Well, I'm afraid they somewhat are, and I think that the core message of that speech was great. You know, we've got to stand up against this, be resilient, stop our streets from being taken over. But you know, he pointed out essentially to the police having to do their bit here, and I think part of the problem is that the protesters are laughing at the police as much as the Prime Minister and the rest of us, because they know that the police are somewhat cowed by their presence, and for whatever reason, the police are not willing to enforce our existing legislation that could quite easily control some of the wilder excesses at these marches, because they're
I don't even know what they mean by wilder excess, because they're saying the entire marches make Jews afraid, and for that reason, people shouldn't be able to protest. So they're talking about everything, and then they choose to say, "Oh, the police could do things about the wilder bits." Which wilder bits? The bit where they say "No genocide now, please." Which wilder bits? The bits that the police are already getting involved in. Those bits, what, like the far right who come out and start causing trouble? Those bits. Is that what it?
There's just a reluctance that seems to do so. So I think the protesters are laughing at everyone here in this country, saying, look how weak.
The protesters, all the protesters are laughing at everyone in this country that is demonizing all of the protesters, not just one protester, not just a couple of them, not the extremes. They're saying the protesters en masse are all laughing at everybody else in this country. Ha ha ha, you're made a bunch of fools because these guys are trying to stop your right to protest. These are fascists. This is what tyrants sound like. They sound like they want to take away your freedoms while pretending they don't want to take away your freedoms up until the point where they take them away, and then they go, ha 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 ha.
You all are. Even when you say you're going to get tough, you're not going to get tough.
Well,
what do you mean by tough?
An example of that. You mentioned the existing laws that the police are not using. The Prime Minister talked about new laws that he might bring in. What new laws are needed? I mean, we were talking also in the last hour about the burglary rates in this country. Half of burglaries in the UK don't even get anywhere near being solved, and as far as I know, burglary
anywhere near, not investigated,
and nothing happens about that. So I mean, what's the point of new laws, and what would they even be?
Well, that's it, isn't it? If you don't enforce the law, it doesn't matter how many laws you have. You can have laws as long as your arm, and yet it won't make any difference. I think what people are desperately wanting now is to see both the existing laws.
Is to see Douglas Murray and Alan Mendoza get it on, do the dirty Henry Jackson back of the society, if you know what I mean. Make it a no-go for Jews, a no-go zone for Jews, because they won't want to go in there and see what's happening. Not between those two men. No, no, no. They want to make a permissive environment for radicalization, if you know what I mean.
Enforced to the full, in the way that we would have recognized, 10, 20 years ago, would have been the norm if protests continued in the way that they have been doing so. And if, for whatever reason, there is a legal problem with the current laws, then sort of with the minimal amount of fuss, insert new laws, then also get enforced. But it's the enforcement factor that matters more than just saying a new law is coming and being processed. Without the enforcement, there is no purpose in having this discussion at all.
And one final thing, whilst I've got you,
there's no laws against peaceful protest. They're talking about enforcing, but what would you be doing? What, start beating people like it's Thatcher time again? Start beating people around the legs, say, oh, you're basically breaking the law. It's hard to tell what you're doing, so I'm going to hit you with this baton.
I'm just very struck by the fact that what you mentioned earlier about synagogue services having to move. I've heard from many Jewish friends and others.
They don't have to. They don't have to, and of course listen. These two whiny women whining about people peacefully protesting and saying how they've talked to other people who have also whined to them about whiny. This is the two completely. Are they really men? I really do think that these are the whiniest of whiny, the caricature of a whiny little girl.
Genuine fear that people have, and the just months of people who are Jewish in this country, for instance, not being willing to go into the centre of London with their families.
But that's up to them whether or not they believe the hype or not, because it's the hype. And then they've also got to say, well, what am I doing? Am I supporting what the state of Israel are doing regardless, or am I not down for genocide? You've got to say, well, I don't. It's like we're Jews. We can't go in there now because they're peacefully protesting. This doesn't make any sense. It's just made up. You're just saying they can, and they're choosing not to. If they choose not to, that's not them being forced out of anything. That's not them being stopped. That's them deciding not to. It's them deciding not to. They have a right to go out and do shopping. They feel uncomfortable because of the dynamics of it all, but they're making the choice themselves. Many others make the choice to go in and either be involved in the protest or go shopping, and they don't have any problems. These are two whiny old girls, whiny little girls, talking about whiny nonsense. Just whine. Whine with eight. Whine.
Do you think that in some way this has been too quiet, this concern? In that, I'm just trying to think if any other group of people in this country felt a fear of going into the centre of London on an average shopping day, I think there would be uproar.
I don't think. Yeah, but that's if they feel. Feely police. We should get the Feely police out, Douglas Murray. Because if a load of people feel a certain way, just feel it because they've been given, we scare them. Douglas Murray and Alan Mendoza here scare loads of Jews and then say, if it hurts our feelings, then surely it should be criminalized. If it hurts our feelings, if we feel like we can't do something, it feels bad. Now, at the same time, these guys are the ones who are against all woke culture, and woke culture is all feelies all of the time. I feel bad. Are you making me feel bad? You making me feel bad. So you've got one side, the woke culture, you making me feel bad. And you've got these guys going, you making them feel bad. And they're both on opposite sides, yet they both use the same inane argument, which is you're hurting people's feelings. They're scared because they've got feel that they might be hurt. They won't be hurt. Oh well, they feel like they might, and you have to care about their feelings. What about their Yeah, but what about all the bombs dropping and the 12,000 dead babies and whatnot? Yeah, but what about the feelies? Douglas Murray and Alan Mendoza care about the feelies. Why can't you think about their feely wheelies? Oh.
I think that if there were marches in the centre of town by some kind of racist organisation that wanted to kill all black people, for instance, people would be talking about it. We wouldn't have had to have waited months for a front page headline like this.
Wait a minute. So these peaceful protests are equivalent to racists chanting, "We're going to kill all black people." This is what this is. This is make this into something so we can make the fear, and then these Jewish community, they'll get the feelies, and we can complain that their feelies are hurt. Oh, Douglas Murray cares about the feelies. What about the feelies, though? What if they were guys who wanted to kill black men? Well, they're not. They're people who are protesting against genocide. Yeah, but they're giving the Jews the feelies, and I'm Douglas Murray. I care about them feelies.
No, Douglas, you're absolutely right. It's yet another example
Absolutely.
of what David Baddiel wrote in his
These
book,
guys need a
that
room.
Jews seemingly don't count. That's essentially what it is. But the problem with that is, as you well know,
Well, I can tell you, David Baddiel doesn't count. David Baddiel definitely does not count. You listen to David Baddiel, and you're an idiot. It doesn't matter. You're an idiot. People spend too much time listening to what comedians say and following them. Yeah. And what is Baddiel saying? I bet you it'll be the same thing. People feel bad. They're feelies. Oh, the feelies.
is that if you start saying, oh, certain sections of the population are less important than others and we're not going to listen to them, it isn't long before the protesters move on to their next target.
That's not what Douglas Murray was saying. Douglas Murray was saying it's equivalent to a load of far right chanting we're going to kill black people. Which all of these protests, all of the things they shown there, all of the pictures they showed themselves of the protests, none of it was equivalent to that. And they're making it into that so that they can say the Jews have their feelies hurt, and everybody's a monster, and they all want to kill Jews, and they're painting them as people who want to do harm to Jews because the Jews are too scared to go into the center apparently because they get feelies.
Yes, okay, the Jews might be today's target, but tomorrow it's other people who might oppose other views that they have in common. And then we soon discover as a society that the danger of ignoring one problem when a no-go zone has been established is that it's much, much harder to bring people out to oppose the no-go zonization, as it were, for other people as well.
No go zonization. Ah, because I don't understand no go zonization. What is this no go zonization? So okay, you really like it. The Jewish community have made themselves into the no go zonization. It's self no go zonization, is what I'm saying, Alan Mendoza. It's self no go zone. It's self no. It's a hard one. It's a tongue twister. It's self no go zonization. Yeah, for the Jews because they might get their feelings hurt. Feelings. Douglas Murray cares about feelings. He's all about butterflies. Him and Mendoza. They need to get a room, a sweaty room, and cover each other in chocolate.
So we should be much more attuned to the realities of what's been going on in London for the past few months. We should have been on top of it from day one. We've left it very late, but it isn't too late. That's the whole point.
We should have been
At any given moment,
attuned to this peaceful protesting. At any given moment, we should cover each other in chocolate.
we could have the apparatus of law and order swing back in action and finally show that this is not a protesters free-for-all, and
Stop
that yes, there's a
beating
right to
peaceful
protest, but you
protesters.
can't do it if you're going to intimidate others.
Well, no one, they haven't proven this at all. Their images were people, the images they showed to prove this no-go zone for Jews looked really kind of peaceful and had disabled people protesting with Palestinian flags, and signs saying no to genocide of freedom for Palestine. None of it. They have not proven anything. This is journalism. This is no-go zonization for journalism. This is no-go zonization, or however you say it. I don't know.
Alan Mendoza from the Henry Jackson Society. Dr.
These
Alan
two,
Mendoza.
these two are unbelievable. Douglas Murray and Alan Mendoza, the Feely brothers. Oh, we got the Feelies. They hurt me feelings. So I want to criminalize them and beat them with sticks. They hurt me feelings. They hurt me feelings. Yes, they hurt feelings, didn't they? That's what we're dealing with nowadays. You realize that's what we're dealing with? That's Douglas Murray. Douglas Murray cares about these feelings so bad. You don't want to hurt people's feelings. Because when they feel afraid, that means it's really fear, isn't it? It's real. They should be afraid if they feel afraid. If they feel afraid, we should be, they feel afraid. What are they made afraid by? Did you see that guy who was in a wheelchair and he was holding a Palestinian flag? Oh, we shouldn't go into the city then, because we feel afraid. And we don't want to feel fear. We don't want to feel bad things, do we? We want to be protected all the time. We don't want to whether the Feelies. This is what we got. Douglas Murray, the Feely boy. The Feely boy. Now notice, whenever he's doing this, he does the same that the woke crowds will do. Understand what this is? This is exactly the same. He will use exactly the same tactics. You're hurting people's feelings. To take one side on the one debate and then use the exact thing they use with it. It's beyond disingenuous, really. What is it? Feelies. You hurt me feelies, Alan. They hurt me feelies, Alan, so bad, Alan. And I love you. We should cover each other in chocolate, Alan. Oh, those Jews get the feelies bad, Alan. Yes, I think that's it for today's NEWSPASTY. Thank you. Bye.
Young generation, like Prime Minister Trudeau, President of Argentina, and so on, that we penetrate the cabinets.